All right, let's talk about something completely different. Let's move away from business and work, and let's talk about travel. And we've seen with the travel industry, not and in terms of images of travel, we've just seen some really interesting shifts that happened, not only obviously during the pandemic but post pandemic, and how people are traveling differently and using travel for different purposes. And interestingly, in 2024, travel was one of our most significant categories in terms of people based imagery, not only stills, but also in video as well. And as a business, we've been developing travel imagery in under the theme of journeys. We've been looking at how not only people arrive at their destination and a lot of the time take photos, especially of the destination. And, you don't have to go too deep into Instagram or any of the other visual social media feeds to see a lot of destinations. So we've been talking about the notion of travel and how we move around and how we how we feel about travel. I'm going to go to you first, actually, on this one, Tristan, to talk about what you're seeing in your region specifically.
Yeah, something we've been looking at and monitoring very closely immediately after the pandemic and then in the years following is how passivity sort of had predominated travel visuals. So you weren't seeing as much of that sort of activity and dynamism that we know accompanies travel experiences typically. And what we're seeing now is that sort of change, and that, brands are moving into sort of the ways in which people are traveling, the journey of travel, to your point, Rebecca, and sort of all the different modes of travel that people are taking and utilizing to sort of escape from their everyday lives. And we're seeing sort of this interest really peak this year, particularly in the United States, but also in Latin America, where hyper local travel is really emerging very popularly. For the U.S. specifically, there's this staying power of the road trip that I thought was just going to be sort of a pandemic sort of trend, but actually it's something that's still holding pretty steady this year. And we expect that to continue. But there's also a lot of other types of journeys, a lot of just even smaller journeys, hiking and biking, and this overall movement from place to place. And what's also interesting is the sort of added layer of that focus on micro moments within those moments of movement. A quick joke between friends while they're biking together, or some sort of a little bit of healthy competition while you're walking or hiking together, what it's like to unpack a car with three children in tow, or, even emerging from a long stretch of driving. So there's the joy of travel in those little moments in between the journey, which we are seeing rise in popularity and interest from brands.
I think we've got some similar crossovers, Tristan, as well, in EMEA as a region. I think and you mentioned it there, one of the impacts of the COVID pandemic was this great desire to really connect with loved ones. We had the rise of revenge travel back in the day. But I think there's a more mindfulness that's coming in now to destination travel and the types of cultural immersion experiences that travelers today, generally speaking, but especially in Europe and the Middle East, really are looking for. Interestingly, when we look at a country like United Arab Emirates, 95% of consumers we surveyed there say that they really believe travel is a good way to connect with family and friends. And if we compare that to Europe, it's coming in at about 77%. For me, what's really interesting in terms of the types of visuals that travel brands in both of these kind of countries across this big region are downloading to tell those stories are vastly different. So if we think about Middle East countries, we can see the travel customers within these countries are really looking at lots of big families and groups of friends coming together, beautiful, sumptuous, overheads of food connecting people. And then we come to Europe and we look at the travel brands and we look at what they're downloading, and it's empty. It's, maximum one person, maybe two people in total. It's very much about an epic kind of aerial scape to show that sense of peace. But there's also a sub story that's happening under that. And it's really about moving away from more of a tourism. It's really beginning to look at the rise of sustainable travel and how that's become an increasing value for people, I would argue, all around the world. And in particular, we're seeing that that's indexing really high now for Europe, but more especially for countries in the Middle East. So we're now seeing that 80% of consumers across the Middle East are telling us that climate change impacts their choices when it comes to deciding what destinations they want to travel to. And when I think about and analyze the type of travel visuals that are being downloaded across the entire region, it's mostly focused on the summer. It doesn't look at, that off season. It doesn't look at off the shoulder travel. There's huge opportunity, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say, to actually show different types of travel experiences throughout the calendar year that takes a more mindful approach towards slow tourism, for example.